Hi guys, it's Janae.
Hey, it's Brittany.
So last Saturday we covered Sarah, and just a quick to let you guys know, on Sunday we aren't going to do podcasts because it's the Lord's Day and we believe it's a day of rest for all of us. So that's why we didn't post something, but this week technically we are on Hagar, and this is where the soap opera unravels. We're just going to get right into it, and the name of Hagar is fugitive or immigrant. And I want to read directly from the book about her character because it does tell a lot about this story. So it says, a foreigner enslaved, she let pride overtake her when she became Abraham's wife. A lonely woman with few resources, she suffered harsh punishment for her mistake. Her mistake! She obeyed God's voice as soon as she heard it and was given a promise that her son would become a father of a great nation. The scriptures that we're going to be pulling out of again are Genesis 16, Genesis 21, 8 through 21, and Galatians 4, 22 through 31. So I'm going to go ahead and give a brief overview because both of us have quite a bit to say about this. So as we know, Sarah was promised, or Abraham and Sarah were promised descendants. And Sarah took it into her own hands and had Abraham marry Hagar and lay with her, and they bore a child together. And during that time, before Hagar actually bore the child, her and Sarah became very hostile towards each other because Hagar became very arrogant and prideful in the fact that she was able to bear children for Abraham. But Sarah became very hostile and arrogant in the fact that she couldn't. So when Hagar was pregnant, she ended up running away, but she was so hungry and starving and so thirsty that she called out on God, and God told her to go back and be submissive to her master. So she went back and she was submissive towards Sarah and Abraham, but Sarah was still hostile towards her. So ultimately, after Hagar had her son Ishmael, Sarah had a son named Isaac. And Sarah did not want to have Isaac share his inheritance with Ishmael, so she ended up kicking Hagar and Ishmael out. So they were on their way, just leaving, and again, she and Ishmael went into a time of desperation because they were starving and they were thirsty. And it says that Hagar, it says, then she went off and sat nearby, about a bow shot away, for she thought, I cannot watch the boy die. And as she sat there nearby, she began to sob. So it was literally during a time of life or death. Her son was dying and she was dying of thirst, and she had nothing left. So she started to sob and she started to cry out to God in the same sense that her son did as well. And then it says that God sent an angel to say to her, what is the matter, Hagar? Do not be afraid. God has heard the boy crying as he lies there. Lift the boy up and take him by the hand, for I will make him into a great nation. And then God led her to a well so that they could not be thirsty anymore. But there's a lot that we want to get into, so we see a big, deeper story in this. And like I said, the Bible has so many levels in it, but this is just the perception that we got of it. So we definitely like your input and your feedback on what you think about this story.
So first, I'm just going to talk about Hagar's submission altogether. One of the key points was that in Genesis chapter 16, verse 9, it says, then the angel of the Lord told her, go back to your master and submit to her. And she did. Hagar eventually went back and submitted to her master because she had no right to make her own decisions and feel like she had authority in the household, because in that time it was very common for the maidservants to sleep with the man of the household in order for inheritances to be passed down, and to carry on the family name and things like that. And so it wasn't something that was very unheard of back then, and so it was really just Hagar's pride why she ran away. But she did listen to God when he told her to go back, and she was very submissive to Sarah after that. And like Janae said, Sarah still had some hostility towards Hagar, and kicked her and Ishmael out after Isaac was born through Sarah. However, oh dear Jesus, I'm sorry. Big reason why Sarah kicked him out was because she didn't want Ishmael and Isaac to share the same inheritance or to have the same privileges, because again, she was very hostile to Hagar. And could you imagine, here you are, you gave your maidservant to be with your husband thinking everything's going to go right, and it just goes completely wrong. And so imagine Sarah being very upset, but imagine Hagar, who Sarah's trying to take her son away from her in a way, and that's not what Hagar ever wanted. So eventually Hagar was kicked out by Sarah, and Abraham sent them away with food and water, but eventually that only lasted for so long, and they ran out, and Hagar did not want to see her son die. She just couldn't bear it. She was giving up. She was ready to just give up and die and just say she's had enough. But again, the angel of the Lord came to her, and as Janae quoted, told her to lift the boy up and take him by the hand, for I will make him into a great nation. And it says, then God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. So she went and filled the skin with water and gave the boy a drink. God was with the boy as he grew up. He lived in the desert and became an archer. And while he was living in the desert of Paran, his mother got a wife for him from Egypt. So they were well off after God opened her eyes, but it was her listening to God and taking the boy by the hand and taking him to get a drink of water that he was made into a great nation as well. It was her submission to Christ that this boy was made into a great nation. And if it wasn't for that, if it wasn't for her obeying God in the first place, when she first ran away, her son would never have been made into a great nation. And if she wouldn't have been submissive to Sarah, her son would never have been made into a great nation. And, through being kicked out by Sarah, she gained her freedom, not only in a physical sense that she was no longer her servant, but in an emotional sense as well, that she was no longer tied to this family. The only ties she had was her son and the great nation that her son was promised. And only through true submission can one gain true freedom.
Good. That was good. So, and that's kind of the perspective we're looking at it in. And it's in submission to God is when you gain that freedom, like she said, when you gain that freedom, but when you gain it from sin. If you want to look at it, by being unsubmissive, Hagar was living in sin, because during that time that was a major thing to be submissive to your masters. So when she ran away with sin in her life. And God ultimately got a hold of her because she was so desperate that she called out to God and she cried out to God. But that also brings up the point that Hagar was so desperate and she was so broken that that's when she was able to call out to God. But then you have to realize that in our times of brokenness and in our times of weakness, those are God's best times, because that is ultimately God's time to build you back up into the person that he ultimately wanted you to be. Brokenness just means that you tried to build yourself up into something that wasn't right and broke. But when you are broken, God can build you up into what his true will in your life was. So during that time, he took her out of that sin. He told her, listen, you need to go back and you need to be submissive. So Hagar went back with a pure heart, and she was submissive towards Sarah, which was ultimately in alignment with what God wanted for her to do. Because if you see, God had a plan for her the whole entire time. It wasn't necessarily that it was going to be easy, because sometimes God leads us through difficult times just to get us to specific moments in our lives. And Hagar and Sarah still had a difficult time. She was still submissive to Sarah, but that's the main point. That was the main key that God wanted. He wanted her to do it the right way. He wanted her to do it without sin. Because Sarah, as she ended up kicking Hagar out, what ended up happening was, as she kicked her out, Hagar gained freedom. And that's ultimately what God wanted in her life for her. Freedom from what was going on. Freedom from the binds that Sarah had on her life. Freedom from all this stuff that was going on. Freedom from slavery. Altogether, that's what God wanted in her life, was freedom. And when she ran away the first time, she was living out to what her name means. She was living out to fugitive. You know, she couldn't have done it in a lawful way unless she was submissive to Sarah, and Sarah ended up kicking her out. But even in that time, it was hard, because like she said, like Brittany said, she was starving. Like, even though Abraham gave them food and water, she ended up starting to starve, and her son as well. But sometimes, like I said before, God puts us through difficult times in our life to get us to that well in our lives. And that's exactly what happened. Again, she went to a time of just desperation, and she had to call out to God. And God ultimately heard her cry and heard her need and said, that's okay, Hagar. Like, that's all I wanted you to do. That's all I needed to hear, was you say my name. And I was right there waiting for you so that I could show you this well that I have supplied in your life. So I just think that is so powerful, because in our times of desperation and in our times of need, like in that road of starvation and thirst, we don't see anything else but our immediate needs. Like, I'm hungry, I'm thirsty, and I'm speaking in the spiritual sense. But like, we don't see past our immediate needs when God is just saying, I want you to keep walking. I want you to call my name, because I have a well right here. You're right here, and I need you to keep going, because this is what I have in your life, and this is teaching you to get to it. So I just thought that was so powerful, that it just definitely showed me, like, in the times in my life where I don't know where to look, God always has that well waiting for me, and he sees the bigger picture. When I don't see that well in front of me, he knows that it's there. But yeah, that was just the biggest thing. So we see it as being submissive to God and being submissive to those that God wants in your life. Sorry. We have a guest in the room, but it's okay. Anywho, yeah, just being submissive to God will ultimately lead you to freedom. Not letting sin have a hold on your life will lead you to the freedom in your life. And we just want to get straight into the questions real quick. The first question is, even though Hagar and Ishmael were outcast and alone, God lovingly cared for them. Describe how you think Hagar felt when she laid Ishmael down and went away because she could not watch the boy die. How did God meet her needs? In what ways has God met your needs, or when you were despairing and alone? So we actually have the answer through our lives. So,
well, we definitely want you to think about what this definitely means for you. I'm just gonna be kind of real with you guys right now. Growing up, my parents always told me that me and my brother were, as some people would call it, destined for greatness, I guess. And they would tell us growing up that God has great plans for us, and we truly believe that. To this day we do. And my struggle right now is that I just want to get to the greatness. I want to fulfill what God has planned for me, and I want to get there, and I want to be just everything that I can for Him. And I'm not saying that I can't be that now, but like as college students, or even if you're in high school or whatever, going to school is like kind of lame sometimes. And we just don't want to go, and we just want to get to the end where we can have our career or, you know, do what we love doing. And God has put a passion in my heart, and I just want to get there where I can do it for the rest of my life and not have to worry about anything else. And so I've just been dealing with impatience, I guess, in my life right now, and wanting everything to be in my timing, everything for it to be right now. And I was talking to my girls tonight, and that's totally not what was supposed to happen as far as my timing goes. And Janae actually brought up Hagar and Sarah's story while we were talking, before we were even discussing making this podcast. And you know, I definitely am just trying to learn how to be submissive to God myself and be submissive to His timing, because my timing and His timing aren't always going to be the same. And I have to do everything He has asked me to do in this timing right now before our timing's on the same page again. And that's just where I'm at right now. And I'm kind of doing this so that, you know, I can be, I guess, accountable to you guys, but I just want to be real with you guys at the same time. I know I have my girls here to help me out, tell me when I'm in the wrong, or tell me the right words. Sorry, guys. But yeah, just turn to God when you need Him, because it's all in His timing, and He'll show you your well when you need it, and He'll open your eyes when you need it. And that's kind of what I'm learning right now, so hope you guys can learn that with me. So I'll just leave you with this last question, and it says, are you in a desperate situation right now? Yes, I am. But it says, read Genesis 21:19 again, and might there be a well to which you can go for sustenance, if only you could see it. Ask God to open your eyes to the way out of your situation, just as He opened Hagar's eyes and aided her in her desperation. Sorry, she's not depressed. I'm not depressed.
That's not what we're getting at here.
It's not at all. But just think about that. Even if it's something about, you know, how you're feeling, whether it's you need more patience in your life, or you are in a situation that you need out of, just turn to God and tell Him to open your eyes, because He's right there with you, and He's not going to give you something that you can't handle.
So, for tomorrow, we are going to be covering Lot's wife, and the key scriptures that you're going to be wanting to look into is Genesis 18:16 through 19, Genesis 29, and Luke 17:28 through 33. So we will see you tomorrow, and definitely keep us in your prayers. So,
bye, guys.
Bye.